everybody, and thank you for joining us this week once again for our Diving Deeper series. And I'm here with Pastor Dave. And Pastor Dave, today we wrapped up the Passion series where we've taken a look at different characters in the Passion story. And we wrapped up with two good ones, literally, today with the two thieves on the cross on either side of Jesus. And
we have these two characters that, in a sense, we know so very little about.
True.
And yet the story is so profound and really bookends the gospel nicely, showing us how Jesus also wraps things up
True.
in a way that culminates his ministry with tremendous grace.
And I think that's a good jumping off point for today's talk, which is grace, which dovetails with love. And I think that's an important question that especially comes through in the talking about the two thieves on the cross, which is, Jesus' love. And, obviously in a moment of where he's endured such agony and torture physically, he still goes further with his love to the one thief on the cross, and by, inviting him into the kingdom with him, because the thief acknowledged who he was.
Yes.
And so I think that is a good question for us to contemplate, really, is, when it comes to not only Jesus' love, but, in your opinion, how far should love go, or why is it important that his love went that far?
Yes, and what a great demonstration right up to the very end. I mean, we're talking about how you can make a plea to Jesus even as he is near death, and that plea is welcomed.
Right.
That grace is still available, and we've seen that throughout Jesus' ministry. The stories he tells, like the Good Samaritan or the prodigal son and the loving father, examples of love that doesn't quit, love that keeps going. And of course, that's a reminder to us that divine love does not quit. It does not give up on us. No matter who we are, what we've been through, no matter how bad we have been. And even at the very end, here's this thief who says, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. A really poignant request, in a sense, that all of us would want to be remembered by Jesus.
Very true.
We don't want to be forgotten about. We want to know, here's this man, it's the end of his life as well, too. And maybe a part of what he's saying is, I want to know my life has mattered for something, that it was worthwhile in some sense, even though I'm dying a terrible death, branded as a criminal. I want to be remembered by the one whose love counts the most here. That's God, as manifested, as revealed to us in Jesus. And so for us, that question comes back to us all the time. How far will our love be willing to go? We talk sometimes about tough love. We talk about people who push our buttons, and it's like, I can't love any further with this person, or I'm at my limits on love,
right,
kind of thing. And so I think we're reminded in this story that God has a way of helping us to extend our limits, or when we've reached the limits of our love, God can help us to take an additional step. Even when we're spent, even when we've given all that we feel that we have to give,
sure, God
is able to give us a bit more. And sometimes, maybe that is on the verge of life and death for some people, or it feels that way for some folks.
Very true.
Like they need that sign of love when they're at a desperate point. Certainly, like these two thieves were.
And I think that's one of the things that always resonates with me, and I know there's even a country song about it, but it's very true. It's a love without end,
Yes.
And it goes into that category of things that are beyond our comprehension.
Yes.
Like you were just saying, sometimes when it comes to extending love in our own lives, like you said, we hit that wall.
Yes.
And
yes.
then, but Jesus, God's love supersedes that. And in what you were just saying, sometimes that helps us to push our love when we think our reservoir is tapped.
Even just a bit more.
Right.
Even
exactly.
Just a more when we're empty.
Exactly. And I think we've talked about it before in past weeks, how when you look back and see things, it's always remarkable to see that, how God intervened in that way.
Yes.
And and that's another example, especially in this case, when we're talking about love and how, we look to Jesus' example, God's example of unending love, unfailing love, and how we make that personable for us.
Yes.
One of the other things, kind of switching gears, that you talked about is, obviously with the three men on the cross,
Yes.
you talked about how, they were trying to make an example out of Jesus, with Rome trying to make an example out of Jesus by crucifying him. And it was kind of a weapon about this uprising of faith, and trying to put things in check. And, again, talking about remarkable things, Jesus took that moment, and in your statement, which was kind of provocative, and he turned their weapon against them,
Yes.
in a sense. And so, thinking about that, it really resonated with having you say that. And how would you say that applies to us today? Why is that important for us to consider that, at Easter time, but, in our lives overall?
Of course, yes. And this is, Rome used the weapon of crucifixion, of the cross, for the worst kinds of crimes, and to make an example of people, and to use that as an example for deterrence, to keep people from pushing back on the power of the empire. And Jesus, through his self-giving love, turned that weapon around completely. And instead of showing that the Roman way of using power was to shed your enemy's blood and to decimate them, and to use intimidation, humiliation, and annihilation as a way to show the world what you were all about, and to make sure that your way prevailed. Jesus, by going to the cross willingly, by the actions he takes on the cross, like forgiving those who have killed him, who are trying to kill him, by offering the gift of salvation and paradise to this other thief hanging with him. All the other things that Jesus says and does on the cross and leading up to the cross gives us an invitation to be a part of this weapon of love, so to speak. This way of God that responds to enemies in a completely startling and surprising way. Wherever there is oppression, wherever there have been people who have been put down and don't have a way to push back with the force of the world, that God's love and God's way can reveal that oppression. This turning of the other cheek, this self-giving love, even to an enemy, disarms them and shows the world how God is able to work and the power of what God's love is able to do. We celebrate that in the culmination, of course, on Easter, and how Jesus is raised, showing us that God's love is stronger than even death itself, even in the power of Roman crucifixion. But it's a reminder for us that we can participate in that love every step along the way in our lives, even in the face of the terrible forces of the world.
And that's one of, especially, like I said, as we're entering into Holy Week this week, it's a powerful reminder, like you said, that it not only of what it represented at that time, but also how it continues to reverberate throughout the years, even to our modern times when we see opposition, personally or on a global scale. And so it's a good lesson to impart today as we've wrapped up the sermon series. And I want to encourage you to take part this week, as we will be having various Holy Week events, such as our today Good Friday service this coming Friday, which we will be streaming. So be sure to check the church website and join us for that, and also next Sunday. In the meantime, we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week.